Okay, so you want to host a World Cup. You're picturing it right now, aren't you? Stadiums packed with 60,000 screaming fans in face paint. Your city on every TV screen on the planet for a month straight. Tourists dropping cash on hotels, beer, and overpriced jerseys like it's Black Friday. Your mayor giving a speech about putting us on the map. Maybe you're even picturing the parade. Yeah, none of that is how the money actually works. The real story here is stranger and honestly a lot more insulting than almost anyone realizes, including, it turns out, most of the mayors who signed up for it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how FIFA restructured the World Cup into the single greatest business deal one organization has ever made with itself, why a $270 million stadium built in the middle of the Amazon rainforest ended up getting pitched as a prison, and why hosting the World Cup isn't really a business opportunity at all. It's something else entirely. Stick around. Because the ending genuinely depends on math, most host cities didn't do until it was way too late. Let's start with the one sentence that reframes everything. A World Cup isn't a tournament you host. It's a franchise you rent from FIFA for 1 month, and like every franchise deal ever written, the franchisor keeps the money and the franchisee keeps the risk. For most of this tournament's 96-year history, that wasn't quite true. Local organizing committees ran the show, absorbed the costs, and shared in whatever came back. Not anymore. For the 2026 tournament, FIFA is running the entire operation itself, dealing directly with host cities instead of going through national federations. That means FIFA controls essentially all the revenue: broadcast rights, sponsorship, ticketing, hospitality, merchandise, all of it funneled into one account in Zurich. The cities whose names are on the marquee, they control the costs. Just the costs. Read that again. So what does buying into this deal actually cost you? Let's talk scale, because it ranges from rough but survivable to you have lost your mind. Tier 1, the small market. Foxborough, Massachusetts, population 18,000, is hosting 7 matches at Gillette Stadium. Local public safety costs alone, an estimated $7.8 million, a bill the tiny town couldn't cover on its own, so ownership had to step in with outside financial backing just to keep taxpayers off the hook. Tier 2, the mid-size market. Toronto's City Council approved a $380 million Canadian dollar budget just to be a host city, not to build a stadium, they already had one, just to run the event around it. Tier 3, the massive brain-melting scale. Qatar spent an estimated $220 billion hosting the 2022 tournament, building an entire modern nation's worth of infrastructure. Stadiums, a metro system, whole cities, from scratch, in the desert, on a deadline. $220 billion for 1 month of football. Here's the part that breaks people's brains. None of those 3 tiers get FIFA's ticket money, FIFA's broadcast money, or FIFA's sponsorship money, not $1 of it. They just get to pay. And here's the trap almost nobody sees coming before they sign the host. The sticker price you just heard is not the real number. There's a second invoice that shows up after you've already committed, and it's the one that actually breaks budgets. First, your own stadium stops being your own stadium. Gillette Stadium, home of the Patriots, got temporarily rebranded Boston Stadium for the tournament, because FIFA doesn't allow existing corporate naming rights to appear anywhere near its event. Whoever paid millions for that naming deal just has to eat the blackout. Second, transportation becomes somebody else's forgotten line item. New Jersey Transit is facing a $48 million bill just to move fans to and from MetLife Stadium for the final. Not stadium construction, just buses and trains. Third, security funding never quite covers security costs. FEMA handed out $625 million in security grants across the 11 U.S. host cities, which sounds generous until you realize that's the same $625 million now split across 11 cities, each independently responsible for protecting stadiums, fan zones, and the city centers from an 8 million visitor tournament during a period of, let's say, heightened international tension. Fourth, and this one's almost funny, several states are paying to host by refusing to collect the taxes they'd normally collect. Florida, Georgia, and Missouri together have waived an estimated $57.8 million in taxes on tickets, hospitality, and tournament transactions. A condition FIFA quietly requires as part of the hosting agreement. You don't just spend money to host. You give up money you were already collecting. So if the costs are this brutal, where's the actual money supposed to come from? This is where it gets genuinely sneaky because the revenue exists. It's just not going where you think. Layer 1, tickets, except FIFA introduced dynamic pricing for the first time ever this tournament, meaning ticket prices float with demand exactly like airline seats. Face value starts around $60 for a group stage seat and climbs to $7,775 for a single Category 1 seat at the final. And FIFA doesn't just keep the primary sale, it takes a 30% cut of every ticket resold on its own official marketplace too. Layer 2, tourist spending, which is the one everybody points to. SoFi estimates the average fan is spending roughly $5,140 per trip on this tournament. Flights, hotels, food, tickets, the works. Boston is the most expensive city to attend at around $7,589 per trip. Seattle's the cheapest at $3,787. Here's the counterintuitive part, the one that actually breaks the fantasy. That spending doesn't go to city governments. It goes to airlines, private hotel chains, and restaurant groups. Some of it trickles back as sales tax, sure. But the city that spent $200 million on security doesn't get a cut of your Delta ticket or your Marriott bill. In Mexico, hotel rates near host venues spiked nearly 1,000% as the tournament approached. That's a massive windfall for hotel owners, not for the municipal budget that paid for the police overtime. Layer 3, and this is the one small market cities cling to because it's the only one they actually get: pure exposure. The city manager of Kansas City in the smallest U.S. market hosting matches put it plainly: you can't put a price tag on this level of global exposure, which is a lovely sentiment. It's also, quite literally, an admission that there's no invoice for it. Exposure doesn't pay the electric bill. Now, the part that actually kills cities financially: fixed costs. Security, staffing, transit, and infrastructure debt don't scale down if fewer tourists show up than projected. They're locked in months, sometimes years, in advance. New York and New Jersey's combined spending is expected to hit roughly $500 million. Los Angeles is projected near $594 million once public safety, transportation, staffing, and infrastructure are all tallied. That spending happens whether 1.2 million visitors show up as forecast, or whether, as New York found out this March, advance hotel bookings were actually tracking 2% below a completely ordinary year with no World Cup at all. Let that land for a moment. The forecast assumed record tourism. The actual bookings were below a normal year. And the security bill doesn't care either way. This is the trap. Cities commit to fixed, massive spending based on a projection of visitors who are legally and practically under no obligation to show up. Meanwhile, FIFA has already locked in its revenue before a single ball is kicked through broadcast deals signed years in advance. FIFA's risk is essentially zero. The host city's risk is the entire bet. And if you want to see exactly how this trap plays out to its final ugly conclusion, look 1,100 miles up the Amazon River to a city called Manaus, Brazil. For the 2014 World Cup, Manaus built the Arena da Amazônia, a stunning 44,000-seat stadium designed to look like a woven Amazonian basket, built in a rainforest so remote that most construction materials had to be shipped in from Portugal. The original budget was roughly $220 million. Delays, flooding, and logistics blew that out to nearly $300 million, a 25% overrun, and 3 construction workers died on the project before it opened in March of 2014. Here's the math that should have been the warning sign from day one. Manaus has no First Division football club. None. The city built a 44,000-seat stadium for a tournament that would use it exactly 4 times, in the group stage only, and then hand it to a local football scene with essentially no fan base capable of filling it ever again. The stadium hosted its 4 matches, including the famous England versus Italy game that summer. And then the World Cup left town. Within a year, journalists were already documenting the collapse. Monthly maintenance costs alone ran somewhere between $233,000 and $250,000, whether anyone used the building or not. A local judge floated a serious proposal to convert part of the stadium into a detention center because at least a prison generates a use case. A decade later, it's still standing, occasionally hosting 4th Division matches, the odd concert, and not much else. A $300 million monument to a 4-game tournament in a city that had no team to inherit it. That's the death mechanism in its purest form. Massive fixed capital cost, tied to a temporary event, dropped into a market with no long-term demand to absorb it once the cameras leave. So let's do the actual math on a good year versus a bad year, because the gap is enormous. Good year, the Germany model, 2006, host cities already owned World Cup caliber stadiums. No new construction, minimal debt, existing demand from strong domestic leagues to fill those seats for decades after. Studies found a modest, genuinely positive short-term economic bump. Low risk because the fixed costs were already sunk before FIFA ever showed up. Bad year, the Brazil model. Brasilia built a $550 million stadium, the most expensive in the country's history, that is now, quite literally, used as a parking lot for buses. Multiple economists studying past tournaments found that more than 4 out of every 5 World Cups and Olympics combined actually ran at a net deficit for their hosts. 12 of the last 14 World Cups lost money for the cities that staged them. Which brings us to 2026, and yes, we have to talk about the guy with a replica World Cup trophy sitting behind his desk in the Oval Office. President Trump chairs a federal task force overseeing preparations for this tournament, with Vice President Vance as vice chair, and FIFA's own president has publicly projected the tournament will generate something close to $50 billion in economic output across the region. Trump himself has said the political tension with Mexico and Canada during a trade dispute will simply make it more exciting. Meanwhile, FIFA's actual audited projection for its own take from this tournament sits somewhere between $11 and $13 billion, comfortably FIFA's biggest single payday in its history. While the 11 U.S. host cities alone are facing a collective shortfall estimated north of $250 million. The federal government is throwing its weight behind ticket sales and border logistics. Nobody in Washington is cutting host cities a check to cover the difference. To be fair to the 2026 organizers, they did learn one real lesson from Brazil and Qatar. Almost none of the U.S. stadiums are new builds. They're reusing existing NFL venues, which is the single smartest financial decision anyone involved in this tournament has made, because it sidesteps the Manaus problem entirely. You can't build a white elephant out of a stadium that already had a paying tenant. So here's the honest verdict. No fake happy ending. Whether hosting a World Cup is a disaster or merely a wash depends entirely on one variable. Did you already own the infrastructure before FIFA ever knocked on your door? Own the stadium already, like Germany, and you might walk away roughly even, plus a month of genuinely great memories. Build something new to impress FIFA, like Manaus, and you're signing up to pay a mortgage on a building nobody in your city will ever fill again. Because at the end of the day, a World Cup isn't something you host. It's something you rent to somebody else's business. And long after they've packed up the cameras and gone home, you're the one still paying the electric bill.